A warm welcome to my viewers, or should I call you riffers? Welcome to the very first episode of Riffing with Rinkoo, a show that reminds you that the only constant is change and tales of resilience are exchanged. Now, joining me on this studio is my founder, director, 161 Visuals, Hafiz. Hi, Hafiz. How are you today?
Hi, Rinkoo. I'm good. How are you?
I'm fine. I am so excited to run this show with my special guest this morning.
Yeah, we haven't introduced him yet, but I hope that our viewers don't mind being called riffers. Just a term of endearment for them.
That's why it's called Riffing with Rinkoo. So it is a term of endearment. So thanks, Hafiz. I think that's a great point that you made here. And now I'm so excited to introduce my very special guest on this first episode, CJ. I am so happy that you're on this show and thank you for your time. How are you today?
Good, and thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited.
Delighted. So, for the purpose of the viewers, tell me a little bit about yourself.
Okay, cool. So, CJ from Singapore, regular civil servant. Mental health as a topic resonates very deeply with me. Growing up as a third culture kid is never easy to fit into to my country, Singapore. And really navigating through this journey has been both very exciting but also very challenging. And I'm super excited to dive deeper today and to really explore those spaces, as this is a safe space.
It is indeed a safe space. I like that you said something about the third culture. Say a little more about that.
So being a third culture kid essentially just means that you are born with more than one culture, right? Or you're born outside, or you're born in your country, but you don't grow up in your country. So resonating with your peers from the same nationality may be very different. And I think this phenomenon really occurs a lot for example, people who are from mixed race backgrounds, or people who are in interracial relationships, for example, where we are kind of experiencing or kind of immune with culture shocks, right? And we have more than one identity. And how do we kind of fit in despite having different identities that lives among us? I think that's where the whole third cultureness, or even the sense of otherness, really stands out. So I think that's why a lot of the mental health issues that I've seen can also be a direct correlation to this sense of othering, and how do I not care too much about fitting in and reinvent my own self, And I think that's
wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful. I just have to share that, I was born in India and I stayed in Africa and then lived in England. And so when I came here, I kind of feel a bit of that third culture thing, the othering and fitting in and not caring whether I was a little different from the rest. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah? Absolutely. Yeah. You're definitely a third culture kid as well.
I'm a third culture kid. Just a little bit older than you. But you got me really curious. I like what you said, and this seems like there's so many similarities. Can you tell me a little bit about, your journey from childhood till now? How has it been for you? Where were you? What have you been doing when you were a kid? How has it been to the teenage years to adult?
Yeah. Well, that's going to take a long while, but I'll try to make it a micro-sized autobiography.
Yeah, let's start with the childhood. Let's start with your childhood. How was that for you?
We are from a slightly middle upper class family, just really nice. But I think the first few years of my life hasn't been the easiest, because I think my dad was just starting out in his career and he had to kind of go overseas. And this was like in the late 80s and early 90s. Being an expat at that time is not exactly fancy. In fact, especially the countries that he goes through, like China back then. And he was in I remember he was in Wuhan. He had to stay there. And nobody knew about Wuhan, only until probably
until when COVID came.
Exactly. So you can imagine how there's no even I think back then in China, even in Shanghai, you can't even find a 7-Eleven at that time. So that's how back it was, right? And I really grew up not having a father around. And
Because he was always traveling.
yeah, yeah. And my mother is like the typical mother. She's like, she wants to be with us, but she's also worried that her husband will be stolen away from like some woman. So she had to like, she had to go be with him and then try to commute. And I mean, she tried the best she could, like, you know. But yeah, like growing up, I remember like, I always wonder like why like my friends or my peers, they have like parents picking them up from school or picking them up from the bus stop, for example, whereby
But it wasn't for you.
yeah, and I still clearly remember the days where and it's really like those you know those movies whereby the prisoners would draw the line on the wall to see how many more days. So I would do that to see how many more days before my mother comes back to Singapore. So yeah, it wasn't the easiest, but then
Where were you?
so from when I was born, my parents decided to let my grandparents raise me in Malaysia. So I'm born in
Malaysia.
Singapore. Yeah, they feel that they couldn't handle.
Born in Singapore, raised in Malaysia.
Yeah, there's like three of us, so I'm like the youngest. So you know, my parents like, okay, I cannot handle a third kid because there's two who's like super young, and at that time my I think they haven't had a flat yet, a HDB flat yet. So my mother owned a salon at that time. Okay, it's still there. Not, I mean, she's not a salon owner, but the shop lot is still there around Bedok area. I forgot which part already. And you know those typical shop lots whereby downstairs you do the business and upstairs
you live.
You live, yeah. So yeah, so when I was born, apparently they finally got the BTO, and then but they just couldn't handle it between my mom, working mom, and also. So I was sent to live with her parents, which is my maternal grandparents, right, until like age 6, and then they decided to bring me back. And even that process was drama because I think back then people don't have the common sense. Because I think what happened, which I still feel really bad to my late grandfather, whom I was very close to, like he just appeared one day and then he said, "I'm taking my son back." And you know, to a grandparent, it's like, this is like, you cannot just take back, you know, it's like, this is 6 years. So I remember I remember growing up, I was like kind of hating my parents, like, why did you
Too
take
many
me
transitions.
away? Yeah, like you don't want me. And then now you want me back, and then now you're hurting the people that loves me, and I don't even know who you are because I know you're my parents, but you're like strangers to me because you were not there for me the first. And then navigating, and then primary school wasn't easy because I'm not like the smartest kid. When I define smart, you know, we define as the academicness of it. And then, you know, even then my dad, I know he probably didn't mean it in a harsh way, but it still kind of resonates now. He would still tell his friends back then, he's like, my son is in the top 10 in class, but he's counting from the back. and you know, back then it was very cruel because they really would publish out your rankings in class, right?
Was like that back then for me as well. Yeah. So
And then I often get punishment as well. Not the very serious corporal one, but back then it was very
go
normal.
stand in the corner.
Yeah.
Or write 100 words on the board.
Yeah, or like, you know, like ruler. I think my hands have gotten a lot of more rulers and then canes. And I've noticed one thing. It's not because I was misbehaving. It's either I didn't do my homework, and they probably didn't even realize why I didn't do my homework. It's really because I don't know how to do it.
At what age were you caned?
I was like, since 7, I got caned to like throughout my primary school, 7 to 9. So I really grew up hating primary, like school in general. Yeah.
How did you as a person navigate through situations like this? Like, what were you feeling and thinking at times like that?
At that time, it was very, very difficult because like my parents are not around, right? And then we were given guardianship to this god grandparents. So my dad's godparents lah. Okay, and she wasn't the nicest as well. I would define as borderline like physical abuse. But I mean, just for full clarity, I mean, even though she's passed, but we've maintained very good relations, you know, and all that. But yeah, it was very bad, and I honestly, like in school it wasn't easy already with the teachers and all that, and then coming back home, like because of all this, yeah, I grew up kind of like when you know the teachers call back home and telling, you know, my my god grandmother, that I didn't do my homework, then she
got
would
all
she would
upset.
she would define that as you're being stupid, like why are you being stupid like a pig, and all that stuff. So I really grew up knowing that, oh, I'm a pig, I'm stupid, in that sense.
So you constantly put yourself down.
Yes.
A bit of self-sabotaging.
Yeah. So yeah, you can tell how that helps with my mental health back then. Yeah.
So a couple of years fast forward, how did you manage through?
Okay, fortunately, I think after I left Singapore, when I went over to Taiwan that time my dad and mom was based there then, right? Um, then because I was in an American school, an international school, right? From grade 4 onwards, I was quite fortunate that the school notices that, okay, this kid needs counseling, and there's like a school counselor and all that. Maybe they're a bit more mature in those detecting these things, right? And I mean, even now, when
you
I
developed empathy for others because you didn't receive it.
yes, and to know that every youth or every child out there
Needs it.
even if they're going through all these things, there's still a hidden potential within them, and it's just up to our patience and our love and concern for them to realize it.
I'm fascinated by the fact that you had you had to stick out a lot of mental toughness in the various transitions that you went through in your life, and some of it goes back to some of my own experiences where I didn't have to have parents travel around, but they had a lot of hard expectations on me as well. Sometimes they looked down on me, and they were always in favor of my brother. And for me, I would see those as traumas, And sometimes I used to justify, as I grew older, that the traumas I faced or the situations I faced back then justifies that I am bad behavior to anyone else as I move on. And yet you were the flip side of me. You said, no, what I realized from all this is what I didn't get, which is empathy. How did you make that pivotal change? How did you? I'm in awe of that because, today's youth, today's people, many people out there, from the past they bring it to the present, and from the present they justify themselves in how they behave. They either look down, or they're angry, or they're just plain mean with people. But you have shown us that you can flip it. You can flip your thought to another side and say, I've been through the darkness, but I want to see light. How did you make that happen? When did that happen for you? What made that happen for you?
I definitely have to give a lot of credit to volunteerism and the sense of giving back. So like when I first started mentoring youth with my university, I see a lot of similar patterns, as I said, right? Where especially when I was mentoring some of the youths from China, they also go through a fair bit because, first of all, they're all coming from the one-child household.
Yes.
So you can imagine, like for us having siblings, so for them it's like times 100. And it's also not uncommon for them, when you mentor a youth from China, right? Particularly with the female youth, it's not uncommon for them to seek your advice in terms of, how do I tell my parents that I don't want to get married yet? Or like, how there's this big phenomenon, it's like, if I am over 25 and I'm still an unmarried woman, I'm considered a leftover woman, right? That's a big phenomenon. So it's like, and how do I, persuade them? How do I still want to go back for Chinese New Year? And not have to rent a boyfriend, for example, which is real, by the way. It happens, right? Like to find a fake boyfriend just to keep the parents' mouth shut, right? So all that, and then as I do more youth mentorship, particularly I think what we talked about earlier, helping out with the youth at Mendaki, at Cinda, I realized one of the key reasons why I was able to connect with a lot of our youths is that despite the difference in our background, our skin color, our languages and religion, whatever, but like I said, I've gone through similar patterns.
And they have gone through similar patterns.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of there telling them like, look, I'm not telling you what to do.
Yeah.
I clearly know that like my family background is definitely more privileged than yours, and I'm not trying to give you first world problems or that kind of thing. But just because I'm slightly better well off doesn't mean that
Doesn't mean I'm any different.
exactly. And I'm really
Different, but same.
yeah. So like healing you also heals me as well. So let's start from there. And I think that promotes a lot of understanding and allyship, which I'm very big on.
Yeah, I like that. I like your empathy and your connectedness, which is so vital. The social connection that you make with the youth is all that is necessary to make people realize that they're worth something. You know, I also realized that we've been using that term a lot in this world, right? Resilience. Monumental research out there, talked and talked. You seem like a very resilient person to me, considering everything you've been through before to now. What does that mean to you? And when did you realize that you actually were resilient?
Honestly, like resilience scares me because to build resiliency, it means you have to go through a lot of pain.
Yes, it is. It
Yeah.
is very exhausting, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's very exhausting.
So, but I realized one thing is that while it's going to scare you because you know that you are about to go through a lot of things that you don't want to go through, it is a passage of constructive discomfort. Meaning,
Nice.
meaning that I'm definitely not going to like it, but coming out of it, I'll be a better version of myself. So maybe I can look forward to that.
That's
know.
nice.
So that's the way I put it, in a sense.
I was listening to a lot of gurus speak out there, and what I loved is that word that you used on discomfort. Right? I think discomfort stimulates growth, don't you think?
Yes,
It might even stimulate resilience.
absolutely.
But comfort may just be about self-care.
Yeah.
But when something is not comfortable, right, that's when good decisions come out.
Yes. Yes.
If you're too comfortable, the decisions may be wrong, right? So I think growth through some suffering and some discomfort is useful.
Yes.
And I had the same experiences too that made me pivot a little bit to seeing some light, So, yeah.
Yeah. I think like pain and suffering is inevitable. So the best we can do is make it constructive, right?
Yeah.
And make it maybe also make it inspiring. That maybe we can gain some of these key lessons and to help other people.
Yeah. CJ, thanks so much for sharing your perspective on what's resilience. Can you give me another example of where you have, you've just been through so many challenges and shared how growth came out of it. In your recent workspace, perhaps, maybe you could share how you've displayed or demonstrated it. Give me an example.
Sure. I think top of mind, and this happened like a few years ago, was probably the first time that I had to go through a job layoff. And it was very painful because it was a job that I really liked, and it was a company that was kind of like a dream for me to get into. So in late 2022, early 2023, somewhere between that period, I was part of the first wave of layoff from Facebook. It's called Meta now. And kind of going back to what we discussed about childhood, I grew up knowing and feeling that I'm stupid, right? So getting
it just
into
plays up
oh
in
yeah.
your mind.
So when I first got into Facebook, it was a sense of like pride that like you see that stupid kid who didn't do well in school can get into a company that like less than few percent can get into, and my parents were very very proud and all that, right? And I think since working there, I worked the hardest as I can possibly work, like literally from like 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. sometimes.
I know what that's like.
Oh yeah, and tech is quite notorious, for that as well.
You got to be ahead of the game.
You've got to be ahead. You've got to exceed expectations.
Absolutely.
I mean, meeting expectation for most people is good enough, but if you're in the tech space, you are the type A personality.
Absolutely.
So you got to exceed. So
you were in the first phase of the layoff.
Yeah.
So that must have really crushed that self-worth of yours again.
Definitely. It made me question myself back again. Like, it's kind of like back to primary school again. When my
It goes back to our traumas that we faced.
Yeah. And so that was difficult. But I think what healed me in the process was
How did you navigate through this?
good thing is that obviously wasn't the only one. It affected a lot of people, right?
Right.
And then subsequently, it also affect a lot of people from other tech companies as well. So we actually have a community for people who got laid off. So there's one for the ex-Facebook Meta employees who got laid off. And then there's a greater one because the tech companies, people know each other. It's a very small circle. So we will always like say, hey, we do have a mental health session to talk about, your recent layoff experience and all that. So we will participate in each other's community circles and all that. And knowing that A, you're not the only one, and B, knowing that this layoff is not because you are not good at your job.
Exactly.
Okay?
It's not your fault. It's not on you.
That is a community validation that hey, it's not me, okay? I'm not the issue here. So and I think also in the process when you hear other people's stories, it's like you feel like, oh wow, like other people have to go through even more than me. Like those, for example, who have to raise a family. Like for me, at least, I'm a single guy, no kids, no spouse, like basically no baggages in that sense. Whereas there's people who's in their mid-40s, early 50s who have to raise like 2 children. The wife or the husband is probably not working. And then they're not even Singaporean, for example. So then that means that the visa got issue. They need to go back to wherever they come from, and so hearing all that, I was like, oh wow, actually I'm far better off, despite the situation, in that sense. And
your ability in adversities and in hard times like that, to still see growth, because I think you have that ability for empathy and reframing, right? You know how to reframe, quickly switch. In which not everyone can do, and there's so much to learn from you in doing that. There's so much to learn from you.
Sorry to jump in, Rinkoo. I think he's one of the main big points of resilience is his adaptability. I think for me that's the biggest point I see. You doing this lah. His adaptability is I think at the all-time high, and I've seen that a few times already for him. Please carry on.
I think that's a pattern that's come across in his entire journey. Your ability to adapt, and grow from adversities. So
I think it's that this adaptability also comes from a sense of calling, whereby you know that you have no choice, but you have to adapt to survive.
Yes.
Yes.
And every little thing that you've been through in your life is a process. And from process comes resilience.
Absolutely.
And then adaptability. And so it goes on, Really, I'm inspired by you.
Thank you.
Share with me someone who may have played a role in shaping who you are and your resilience.
Very recently, I don't know whether, Rinkoo, you have this kind of experiences before, whereby when you think about someone who has departed, maybe, you really feel their presence spiritually, and then the revisiting, process. I think the most unique experience I had recently was when I started to think back about a complete stranger. It's not even like a family member and all that, because I think recently I was I was quite proud that I was recently appointed as the Global Ambassador for SDG 5 by British Council. So really being the face of championing gender equality for women and girls. And recently just coming back from Hong Kong, where they sent me to Hong Kong to share about being a UK alumni and how has UK education cultivated my empathy and my work in the public sector and all that. So obviously,
interesting.
It's good to know that the British, the whole education sector is proud of you, and then obviously my parents are very proud and all that. But before going to this trip, I got very emotional, and it's not even because anyone made me emotional. It just made me think back about a scene during my childhood when I was probably 8 years old. I remember there was one time in our HDB flat. We always have this or I call him the aircon uncle, lah, you know. He would come and, you know, fix our aircon, you know, clean thing. And there was, I remember there was one time where he just looked at me very like, he just talked to me. He never talked to me, but for some reason that day he decided to take a break from his air conditioning duties and just talk to me. And
How old were you then?
I was like 7 or 8 years old, okay? And he just looked at me and go like, he's just like, boy, you really need to study hard. If you don't study hard, you're going to end up like uncle. You're going to end up like me, like doing like all this job and being thrown around like a monkey and not knowing what to do. And I remember at that time I felt very awkward because this is not like your typical adult nagging you. Because when he says that to me, there was a sense of helplessness and sadness in his eyes. And yeah, recently I just told my mom, like, I don't know why, as I keep thinking of him, I got very, very emotional because I'm just thinking that for a grown adult to be confessing these things to a 7, 8-year-old
He
child.
was relating back to himself.
Oh my God, what is he going through, you know?
And he
At
was hoping
home.
as a transition figure that you wouldn't go through that.
Yes, yes. And
Powerful.
and I'm also thinking like, if he can like just confess his struggles to a 7, 8-year-old kid, like what kind of baggages does he have back home? And who are his children to look up to or to get the support that they need if their father is also struggling? And so that got me very, very emotional for some reason. And my mom's still finding like, oh wow, I never knew you had such a deep connection with that uncle. I was like, because I'm just thinking like, with youth, particularly those from like lower income backgrounds, like these are probably their parents.
Yeah.
And what you know, like who is going to help them if no one is there? You know.
What were you thinking when he said that to you when you were 7? Did any of that register in you, or did it really hit you?
I was very confused because I was like, I have adults nagging me to do better and all that, but it's always the nagging, and you can tell that they are very authoritative.
And this is the first time someone was speaking with you and not to you.
Yeah, yeah,
It stayed with you.
yeah. And because I can tell how helpless he's feeling.
Yes.
But as a kid, I don't know how to help.
Yes.
You know, in that sense. So kind of like flashback, I feel that uncle, I don't know whether he's still around, but his presence is definitely around whenever I do a lot of work with youth mentorship. And I always think, I hope this aircon uncle is proud of me, you know, when I'm reaching out to all these youth from lower income households.
Did you ever go and see where they can find where he is now?
Yeah, that'd be interesting. I might do that.
It's like the TV series where we go back and find our helpers after 10 years.
Yeah. Definitely. Yeah, that could be a
I
journey.
think so, because
And
I think he was an inspiration for you.
Yeah, and
That light bulb.
I definitely want to share about what I've done I think it was last year, when I created a career mentorship program for the B40 youths in Malaysia. So B40 stands for bottom 40%. So I created a 3-month program for B40 youths in Malaysia, Indonesia, and Philippines. It was recently featured in Straits Times, so I was very, very happy. And and then just looking, I remember when I first created this program, you know, we have to do the Google Forms, the sign-up list, right? And I have this startup that helped me, you know, to curate as well. And when they will send me the final list for the approval, you know, to see that which youth would be eligible, because we want to be very strict, like you have to be B40. This is reserved for the really underserved youths, right? Rinkoo, I mean, I don't know why, you know, just looking at their parents' occupation, I really got very emotional because I was like, some like both are not working, some are like, you know, Grab drivers in Malaysia and they're all like making like less than 5,000 ringgit a month, you know. And these are like bright students who are in their final year in a local uni. And you know that if nobody is there to give them that referral or even that advice on how to build a good CV, they are going to graduate to unemployment because the chance of their parents knowing what they know would be very unlikely. And so that sense of calling is also very powerful to me. Yeah.
Wonderful. If you had to go through all these struggles again, like you've lost a job, you've had very uneasy bringing up. Would you go through it again to get where you are today?
I think I would say yes, but a twist in my answer would be I hope I have the brain that I have now going through it. Yeah. So you know that saying goes like, do you want to go back to, do you miss your younger self, you know, the 20s and all that, right? For me, it's like, I don't really miss being young, but I don't mind revisiting it with my current brain. Like, I know exactly what is going on,
Of course,
you know?
we all wish
Yeah.
we had that
Yeah.
brain today
Yeah.
back then.
Yeah. Like, Like, I don't care about like, you know, less wrinkles and all that stuff. But it's really the wisdom that we've
Yeah.
built.
So would you say you're your best self today?
Definitely, but could be better. I guess I'm also being type A again, which is why I think constantly exploring the mental health space,
Yes.
resonating with like-minded individuals like yourself, like Hafiz. These are like the allies that we need in our life, or like what I call it, our personal board of directors that
Absolutely.
we constantly need to sync up with.
Absolutely.
So yeah,
You've been through mental toughness and you've recovered, and now you're very curious about mental wellness. And all of us, in our own interpretation, should understand what is mental wellness. What is that to you?
I think mental wellness is all about being very honest with yourself.
Wonderful.
Yes.
Accepting who you are, being
Yes.
honest with yourself.
Yes, and not afraid to reach out for help if you need to,
Yeah,
you know, and also
I
constantly
like that.
revisiting your priority list, you know.
Yes.
It's very important to tell like your loved ones or to
Yes.
tell yourself, I want to prioritize myself first, because if I'm not in the best version of myself, it's not going to do any help to the people around me or the people that I love. So having that crucial conversation with yourself is very, very important.
That is the most powerful thing I've heard anyone say. Very few people want to face themselves. Very few people want to say that mistakes have happened or they've been through something traumatic. Being just mindful that I'm going through this. I'm going through this. It's okay. I accept and I move on again. I bounce again.
Yes.
I can be in a dark place today, but tomorrow I can try. And I like that you said that, because accepting yourself is by far the biggest skill in resilience. Right? There's no point if you can't accept who you are. Right? So I think that's wonderful.
Let me jump in here, Rinkoo.
Absolutely. Yes.
Personally, for my journey, why I find it difficult at times, especially the initial years. I'm 38 now. Maybe it's been like a 15-year journey for me through being aware in mental health. For me, I had to deal with a lot of shame, and it falls under so many categories. With my peers, amongst my family members, on so many levels. With my dad is a set of shame lists. With my mom is a different set of shame lists. With my siblings is another set. So maybe we can, share just a little deep dive about that. What you guys think about that? Because that's my take on why it's so difficult.
Sure. Yeah.
What do you think?
Wow, set of shame lists. Yeah, I feel I'm constantly walking in the hall of shame myself.
Aren't we all? Aren't we all?
Yeah, but I think like I think what's really important for all of us to realize is that how we define shame is very subjective also, right? So it's like it's not fair for other people's definition and to use that to beat up ourselves. So who is the more shameful one if you look into it, right? Yeah.
Because I always felt that I was ashamed because I couldn't, uphold their standards, and that becomes my shame. So after learning that, I realized that it's not totally my fault. In fact, like 90% of the shame comes from not being able to achieve other people's standards. So I think it's very essential to know ourselves, and like you said, the most crucial part is about being honest. And I think that's the key start to any mental growth, mental health issue if you really want to address it. And I hope a lot more people can do this.
Definitely.
Just being honest with yourself.
Absolutely. Honesty.
Yeah.
So some rapid fire questions from me.
Okay. Sounds good.
3 words that would describe you right now for who you are today.
Resilient, proactive, and impatient.
Some level of impatience is always
Yeah.
good.
I like to think of it that way too.
Excellent. Since you've said resilience, if resilience had a voice, what do you think it'll say to you right now?
I think what it will say to me is more will be coming, okay?
Nice.
So be ready. But knowing you now, being a bit more street smart, mentally street smart, you know,
Nice.
knowing the tools, the hacks, the people around you who you can reach out to, I think you'll be fine. Yeah.
And do you love yourself as who you are today?
That can be tricky. There are days where I hate myself, as we all
You
do.
love yourself more than the days you hate yourself?
Today is a good vibe day. You know, I'm surrounded with good friends and having a great conversation with you. But I think it's important to know that like tomorrow might not be as good as today.
That's okay. That's what resilience is about.
But yeah, guess what?
You can't always be resilient,
Exactly.
right? One day is going to be bad, next day
Yeah.
you just take a step up
Yeah.
and bounce up, right? And the next
Exactly.
day it's going to be bad again, and then again the next day it's going to be better.
Yeah.
Do you think you'd be a different person if you hadn't gone through all these things?
Yeah, I think so. And not necessarily better. Because if I didn't go through like the struggles I told you, like during my childhood, during my layoff and all that, actually I might end up becoming an elitist Chinese in Singapore, for example,
An
right?
elite public servant.
Oh yeah, oh yeah.
You're in a public service.
Like, can you
know
imagine like if at age like 13 I'm like a president scholar? Like I wouldn't know
You
what
wouldn't like
empathy
that,
is,
you
right?
wouldn't like
I'll
that.
be like, why are the kids so stupid, you know? Why they cannot baka? Oh, so easy, right? You know? Like,
Well said, well
like very
said.
easy, you know?
To the public servants out there,
Yeah.
please hear.
Yeah.
And that being said, Rinkoo, my friend volunteers for Mendaki and Sinda. He's a Chinese
Oh, thank you.
fellow.
So you are epitome of a multiracial kid.
I hope so. I like
You
to
really
think I am.
signify the SG60.
He is Singapore, man.
You are really, you should be
Don't give me
honored
the stress, man.
in the National Day Parade of SG60 for being the epitome of multiracial. No, nothing intended, but a Chinese serving with Sinda, with Mendaki. I mean, that is what I truly mean to be a Singaporean. You know, so amazing.
You know the thing I always share to people is that while a lot of my peers and I'm very grateful, a lot of peers will say that, wow, you're so good, you volunteer in places like Mendaki and Sinda. For me, it's a privilege to even be accepted by Mendaki and Sinda. Because for a Chinese, you can imagine, for a Chinese to go into a community, an ethnic minority community, they have to trust you, first of all. And a lot of the Malay and Indian individuals will be like, what are you doing here? Like, confirm, the first few months, you'll be like, what are you doing here? Are you trying to be a politician so you can win our votes, for example, right? And we see those, or like, what is your intention? So to really build that sense of trust and to gain it, that to me is my honor and my privilege, you know, in that sense. So to be entrusted by my ethnic minority brothers and sisters is something that I really value, you know. And I think what made me most proud of is that, you know, after a number of years when you volunteer, you get a sense of recognition from them that it's like, this guy has got street cred. And that to me is better than any award, you know. Because how many times have we seen people getting an award where you give them a side eye, it's like, Whereas for them, it's like, I haven't gotten any awards from them, but like, when I go into community, everybody greet me like I'm one of them. And that to me is an honor, yeah.
I think you come across what people need to think through a little bit, that struggles like this in life make you who you are, and authenticity, right? Being honest with yourself, being authentic with yourself, just, you know, bringing presence of who you are, right? And helping others to journey along, to not suffer as much as we have suffered, but by opening up and being authentic, you know. And I think that is incredible, because very few people in Singapore, would you agree, are not ready to open up to themselves, not ready to share who they are with anyone else, you know.
I think amongst Singaporeans in general, like we all have the potential to have that conversation, but we're always waiting for that platform
Yep.
or that moment too.
Yep.
Otherwise, we're all very, very,
Closed
very
in,
close to
closed
ourselves.
in.
Yeah, and that's how our culture is like, you know. Yeah. So it's I think that's why being in this room is precisely the kind of platform that we really need in Singapore. So
Yeah, we hope to continue this. CJ, it's been absolutely terrific having you on my show today. I am even more inspired to be more resilient, learning great golden nuggets from you. So just before we wrap up, if I asked you to say something to the viewers, you know, one word, one advice, one resilience law, something that you want to let them know from everything that you have shared.
I think the biggest key takeaway that I will have is that we all have a path to resiliency. The more honest you are with yourself, the easier it's going to be, and you're not alone ever, and we're here for you.
You are not alone. We're here for you. I would like to thank CJ again for being part of this show. I hope to see you again soon. Like Ellen, I'd probably want to call you back again and again. Why not?
Pleasure is all mine.
Thank you so
I'd love
much.
to be back. Yeah.
So on that note, viewers, this is Rinkoo Ghosh signing out today. Please don't forget to follow, like, share, and subscribe my channel. I'm looking out for all of you and hope to see you in the next episode of Riffing with Rinkoo.